What is going on YouTube? Running Gun Sports back here with another video. Today is our weekly NFL news update, but most importantly is our NFL draft update, or excuse me, NFL draft review. 2021 NFL draft was a very fun one. A lot of college teammates really reuniting within the same draft class, and we're going to be talking about winners and losers and whatnot. And with that being said, follow our social media pages. We just released our Ravens off-season review. Follow and follow our social media pages at running_gun_sports on Instagram, at running_gun_sports on TikTok. And with that being said, let's get right into it. And Sean Lee from the Dallas Cowboys has retired after 11 seasons. Great career. Happy retirement to Sean Lee. The Broncos trade a 6th-round draft pick for Teddy Bridgewater. Each quarterbacks will have an equal opportunity to compete for the starting job. And I think that none of those quarterbacks really, in my mind, are elite quarterbacks by any means. I think Teddy Bridgewater might be a little better than Drew Lock, but Teddy Bridgewater is also a little older. I think they're pretty much equal. I mean, the stats do tell you Teddy Bridgewater is better. If you look at the stats, Drew Lock in 2020 had 2,933 yards, 16 interceptions, 16 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, and all those stats ranked below or above 20th in the NFL, which is bad. 21st, 20th, 34th for QBR, and 29th. So just not a good year for Drew Lock at all. And he's very young, and it seems like the Broncos believe in him. And the Broncos really had a struggling year last year. They lost their star receiver, Courtland Sutton, very early to an ACL tear. So that was very, very unfortunate. And so I think that it'll be interesting to see who they start. If you look at the stats for Teddy Bridgewater, he's not in the greatest for stats as well, but he's better than Drew Lock, but not by much. He had 3,733 passing yards, which ranked 17th in the NFL, 15 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, 24th in the NFL, 64.2 QBR, which ranked 17th in the NFL. So, be interesting to see who gets that starting job of the Denver Broncos. And a lot of people thought that they might take a quarterback in the draft. They ended up taking a cornerback, Patrick Surtain, the second, and we'll talk about that pick later on. Aaron Rodgers has told people from the Packers organization that he will not return to the Packers if Brian Gutekunst, excuse me if I pronounced that wrong, but is fired. The Raiders are currently a potential landing spot for him, and if the Packers lost Aaron Rodgers, I don't know what they do without him. Aaron Rodgers was the 2020 MVP, and how many MVP players have you seen leave the team immediately after? Not many, I'll tell you that, and that's really unfortunate. Since 2012, the Green Bay Packers have drafted only one offensive player in the first round of the draft, and that player for offense was indeed Jordan Love, the Utah State quarterback, the most questionable pick in the NFL draft last year, in my opinion, and probably the worst one, to be honest. Maybe not. Maybe you put Isaiah Wilson as a worse pick, but Jordan Love, I don't know why they picked him. Terrible move. And there was talks of trade rumors with them in New England, and then New England ended up taking Mac Jones. So it's be interesting to see where Aaron Rodgers does go, and we will update you on that. Moving on now to the NFL draft, we're going to be talking about the draft happened Thursday through Saturday, rounds 1 on Thursday, rounds 2 and 3 on Friday, and rounds 4 through 7 on Saturday. And so let's get right into it. The first two picks, actually really the first two picks were kind of obvious. Trevor Lawrence to the Jacksonville Jaguars and Zach Wilson to the New York Jets. Both those guys I had going in my mock draft there. And the number 3 pick was really questionable on whether the San Francisco 49ers would take Mac Jones or whether they'd take Trey Lance. And I personally am a bigger fan of Mac Jones, but I did think the 49ers would take Trey Lance. There was talk that Kyle Shanahan was really the only guy in the 49ers organization to select or to want to pick Mac Jones as their third overall draft pick. And the 49ers traded up. There was no secret that they're drafting a quarterback, trading up from not that far back in the draft to the number 3 pick in the draft. And so, obviously, they wanted a quarterback. They got Trey Lance. I had Trey Lance going to the San Francisco 49ers in my mock draft. and turned out that I was right. And in the number four overall selection, I had Kyle Pitts going to the Atlanta Falcons. He did go to the Atlanta Falcons. And a lot of people disagree with this move, and I can understand why. And really, it's because they don't have a good defense. The defense struggles a ton, and so that's why I think that a lot of people don't like this move. But there's no defensive player who's just that good that can really help the team just become a great team right away, like a Chase Young type of guy. It's really, or a Nick Bosa or something like that. There's no one really like that. First player taken on the defensive side of the ball in the draft came at the ninth pick, or excuse me, at the 10th, or excuse me, the 12th pick. And so that was Micah Parsons. And I don't think Micah Parsons is good enough to turn a team around that quickly like Chase Young. But he's a very good player, but just not that good enough. But at the number 5 overall pick, the Bengals selected Ja'Marr Chase. I had Penei Sewell going, and I really disagree with this move. This possibly could be one of the worst picks in this draft. And Joe Burrow, obviously, we saw how bad the O-line was for the Bengals last year, running around for his life back there, and just really, you can't have that for your first-round draft pick quarterback. And so I just thought that them picking Ja'Marr Chase is not going to help them at all. In my opinion, I just think that you can't throw to a receiver that all these great receivers that you have if you're running for your life. And Joe Burrow is not the most mobile quarterback there is, and obviously we'll see how he does without. He's gonna have a lesser offensive line with Penei Sewell not going. But looking at the Bengals draft class, Ja'Marr Chase from LSU, Jackson Carman, offensive tackle from Clemson, Joseph Asai from Texas, defensive end. They picked two defensive end, a defensive end in the third and fourth round, and Cameron Sample from Tulane, Tyler Shelvin, defensive tackle from LSU, Dante Smith, offensive tackle from East Carolina, Evan McPherson, place kicker from Florida, Trey Hill, a center from Georgia, Chris Evans, a running back from Michigan, and Wyatt Hubbard, a defensive end from Kansas State. And really, the Bengals were looking for their team needs were wide receiver, offensive tackle, offensive guard, tight end, defensive end, and they got a lot of those people, but they didn't get they didn't get the best offensive tackle they could have gotten, which was Penei Sewell, and they already have decent receivers. They did pick up Thaddeus Moss. We'll see how he does, and it's gonna be interesting to see how that will go. But I think overall for the Bengals, a decent draft. I'd give the rating for Ja'Marr Chase being selected with the 5th overall pick a B minus. It's just not a good move at all. Ja'Marr Chase is a very good player, but just not the move the Bengals needed at the time. 6th overall pick, I had Ja'Marr Chase going to the Miami Dolphins in my mock draft, and obviously did not happen. He went to the Bengals. But Jalen Waddle, wide receiver from Alabama, went to the Miami Dolphins. I think it's a great move, reuniting Tua Tagovailoa with his star receiver from college, and I think that that's really going to help that team out a lot. That was one of their team needs for sure, and they came through with that. The number 7th pick, I had Devontae Smith going to the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions ended up picking Penei Sewell. I really think that the Detroit Lions were not expecting Penei Sewell to be around. They thought the Bengals would take him possibly, and it's very surprising that they didn't. And I think that it's a good move, but it really doesn't help the team that much. They don't have any playmakers at all, and that them picking up Penei Sewell is a help to Jared Goff, who's a mediocre quarterback at best, and so it's really not going to help the Detroit Lions very much at all. But the Detroit Lions did add Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round of the draft. They also picked up some defensive tackles, cornerbacks, and running backs, and an inside linebacker. Overall, I give the Detroit Lions a 2 out of 5 on their draft. I just don't think Penei Sewell was the greatest move. They don't have the weapons to protect, and it's just not a good move for them at all. It's like buying ammo and you don't have a gun, in my opinion. That's how I put it. To number 8th overall selection, I had the Carolina Panthers selecting Justin Fields, quarterback from Ohio State, and this might have been the worst move in the draft, possibly. The Carolina Panthers selected J.C. Horn, cornerback from South Carolina. I think J.C. Horn may be the most overrated player at the defensive side of the ball right now. and he's not very. I don't think he's as good as people claim he is. He's not better than Patrick Surtain at all. And the Panthers using their eighth overall selection when all they have is Sam Darnold. And when Sam Darnold was on the Jets, there was talk of the Jets picking up a quarterback, and obviously he was traded, and then now they pick up a cornerback, and it just shows you if one team's not confident in Sam Darnold, it doesn't give me any reason to be confident as the Carolina Panthers organization in him to not select a quarterback. But they didn't, and I think that was one of the worst moves in the draft, as I mentioned, and it's not going to help the team out at all. And their defense was already very bad, but he's going to help the defense, I think, a bit. But I just think that really Sam Darnold won't get the job done, and I think really it's just a terrible move, and I just one of the worst moves to pick a corner in the top eight, not even the best corner in my opinion, and I just thought it was a flat out terrible move for the Panthers organization. Moving on to the ninth overall pick, another cornerback, Patrick Surtain, was selected by the Denver Broncos. I had Micah Parsons going to him. Micah Parsons dropped a little lower than I expected, but a very good move. The Denver Broncos defense is going to be very good next year. Bradley Chubb, Awuzie, and also obviously Von Miller if he's available to go. And we haven't really heard much about him at all, but it's going to be very interesting to see how Von Miller does do and if he comes back. And he's had some legal troubles, obviously, and hopefully he can come back and play well again. There was in the draft at the 10th overall pick, the Cowboys and the Eagles had traded picks, so the Cowboys had the number 10th overall pick, traded with the Eagles to back to the number 12 overall pick. With the 10th pick in the draft, I did have the Cowboys selecting Patrick Surtain. Obviously, the Cowboys were not selecting at the 10th overall pick anymore due to them trading with the Eagles, but the Philadelphia Eagles traded up to select wide receiver DeVonta Smith, which is a very good move. And with the New York Giants in front of him and Jalen Waddle already gone, a lot of people thought that Jalen Waddle would be going to the Giants. I myself included thought he would. And with Jalen Waddle being selected earlier than a lot of people expected, that really raised some flags for the Eagles. And great move, in my opinion, for them to trade up. So very good move. And I thought that it really was worth the trade because I really think that the Giants would have moved up and I really thought the Giants would have selected Jalen Waddle with that pick, or excuse me, DeVonta Smith with that pick because Jalen Waddle was gone, and so good move in my opinion by the Eagles. Rare to see it, but it happened. At the number 11th overall pick, the Chicago Bears selected Justin Fields, really dropped a lot lower than I expected, and I thought that the Carolina Panthers would have picked him, and I think that's one of the worst moves in the draft for the Carolina Panthers to not select Justin Fields and to pick J.C. Horn. I mean, seriously, just not a great move at all in my opinion. Justin Fields, I really think will actually do very well in Chicago. I didn't think that they do very well. I don't think that he's the greatest quarterback, and I don't even think he's the second greatest quarterback right now. And I think that there's people in the draft better than him, but I honestly think that he'll do well with the Chicago Bears. And anything better than mediocrity is great for the Bears, considering the past history of that team. And so, very good move for the Bears. Talking about their draft class right now, their needs were quarterback, offensive tackle, offensive guard, wide receiver, cornerback. They picked up Justin Fields, obviously, offensive tackle, Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle, Larry Broom from Missouri, and running back Khalil Herbert from Virginia Tech in the 6th round. They had 2 6th-round picks. Daz Newsome, wide receiver from North Carolina, and cornerback Thomas Graham Jr. from Oregon. 3 6th-round picks they had, and Chris Tonga, defensive tackle from BYU in the 7th round. So a very good draft class for the Chicago Bears. Give them a 4 out of 5 there. The just offensive line still going to need a bit of work, but they're not far from being a very good team, and especially with Justin Fields, the quarterback, I think he can help that team a lot. The number 13th overall pick, I had the Los Angeles Chargers picking Rashawn Slater. They did indeed pick Rashawn Slater, and a very good move. Justin Herbert needs the protection. They get it for him, and it's really going to help him have an even better year than he did last year. Justin Herbert obviously won Rookie of the Year last year and had a great season, and I think that it's going to help a lot to have him protected, and we won't see what possibly could happen to Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow's really got a good shot of getting injured again without that offensive line being very strong, and adding a receiver is really not going to help, in my opinion. But the looking at the Chargers team needs offensive tackle, tight end, cornerback, and wide receiver and defensive tackle. Obviously, Rashawn Slater, offensive tackle, 13th overall pick. Great pick, my decision. A++ for that. And Asante Samuel Jr. dropped way farther than I expected. I had him going 30th overall to the Green Bay Packers. They picked him up in the second round with the 47th overall pick, so that was a steal for them, especially them needing cornerbacks. Josh Palmer, wide receiver from Tennessee, in the third round. Trey McKitty, tight end from Georgia, great tight end from Georgia after losing Hunter Henry to the Patriots. It's going to be very good. They did sign Jared Cook as well, but Trey McKitty is a very talented player coming out of the Georgia Bulldogs program. In the fourth round, Chris Rumph, the second outside linebacker from Duke. In the fifth round, Braden James, offensive tackle from Nebraska. Two sixth-round picks, Nick Niemann, and an inside linebacker, and Larry Roundtree, running back from Missouri. And with the seventh round pick for the Los Angeles Chargers, Mark Webb, safety from Georgia, and very good year in the draft for the Chargers, and I give them a 4 out of 5 as well. They just need some defensive presence there, but they have that a lot already. So them not picking a defensive tackle up in the draft is not going to hurt them as badly as one may think. At the number 14th overall pick, the Jets selected Elijah Vera Tucker, and a very good move, especially after selecting Zach Wilson. And we all expected Zach Wilson to go second overall. No surprise that he went where he went and what pick in the draft he went. And obviously a great move. And I think that it's just going to help him be protected, unlike you see Joe Burrow. I'm going to bring it up a million times, and I know some people are going to get annoyed with me for that. But I think that Joe Burrow is just... I feel sorry for him that his team doesn't care that much about him. Sure, you can get him all the gadgets you want, but you need protection, and it's just a terrible move for them to not pick up Penei Sewell. And they're a team that they could use those weapons, where they have those weapons to protect, unlike the Detroit Lions, where they really don't have many weapons to protect. And so it just makes no sense to me. Looking at the Jets draft class, they had a very solid draft class. Their first four picks were incredibly good. And Zach Wilson with the number 2 overall pick. Their needs were quarterback, running back, cornerback, offensive guard, defensive end. They got Zach Wilson, Elijah Vera Tucker, offensive guard with the 14th overall pick. Elijah Moore, 2nd round. Michael Carter, running back in the 4th round. And just all those picks right there, those are solid picks. Some people even had all those guys going in the 1st round, and so very impressive draft class for North New York, and I give them that 5 out of 5 there. That's a very impressive draft class for the New York Jets. And if Zach Wilson can pan out, I don't know how well he'll do. I'm not high on him at all, but if he can do well, I don't see them having a problem being a very good team next year. And I don't think that they'll make the playoffs or anything like that. They're in a very tough division. But Zach Wilson can hopefully try and turn that team around. The number 15th overall pick in my mock draft, I did have Mac Jones going to the New England Patriots. He did end up going to the Patriots. A very good move for the Patriots to pick up Mac Jones. And I thought that it was one of the better moves. And I think a lot of people expected it a lot, personally. And we all see the fit. It's a very good fit, and the the New England Patriots, their draft class was also very strong. Bill Belichick had a ton of money to spend this year. He spent a lot of it, and he picked up Mac Jones in the first round, Christian Barmore in the second round, Ronnie Perkins, defensive end from Oklahoma, Ronmore Stevenson, running back from Oklahoma, Cameron McGrone, inside linebacker from Michigan, and Josiah Bledsoe, Missouri safety, William Sherman, offensive tackle from Colorado, Trey Nixon, wide receiver from UCF. Their needs were quarterback, cornerback, wide receiver, running back, inside linebacker, and they got almost all those positions except for cornerback. But they did pick up a safety, so I'll give them a 5 out of 5 on that draft. I think Mac Jones is going to do so well at the next level with that team, and he's the guy for that team. I can tell he's very, very good, and he's got pro reads like Tom Brady does, and he's going to do so well at the next level. At the number 16th overall pick, I just mentioned I had Christian Barmore going to the Cardinals, but obviously went to the New England Patriots, and so the Arizona Cardinals selected Zaven Collins. This is one of the more questionable draft picks, really, this far, and a lot of people don't like the move at all, and I honestly don't see what the problem with it. Zaven Collins is a very good player. People argue lack of competition, but I could say that about Trey Lance. And I think that offensive side of the ball competition matters more than it does on the defense side of the ball for sure. And so if people are really knocking Zaven Collins for playing in a weaker conference, then I could say the exact same thing about Trey Lance. And so I think that it was honestly a good move. And they had some team needs: tight end, cornerback, defensive end, wide receiver, running back. Picked up Zaven Collins at 16th overall. Rondale Moore, an explosive wide receiver out of Purdue. We've seen what he can do. Marco Wilson, the infamous shoe thrower from Florida, was picked up in the 4th round, cornerback. So filling in team needs. Picked up a defensive end, Victor Demuki from Duke, and a cornerback, Tay Gowan from UCF, and James Wiggins, a safety from Cincinnati, who had a very good year last year, and Michael Mennett, center from Penn State. And they filled up a lot of their team needs. I'll give them a 3 out of 5 on the draft class. And I think that Zaven Collins is definitely a risk, but I think that Trey Lance is way more of a risk, and a quarterback is a lot less more replaceable than a outside linebacker. So we'll see what happens. At the number 17th overall pick, I had Trevon Moehrig going to the Raiders, and obviously they picked Alex Leatherwood. Trevon Moehrig actually did go to the Raiders in the 2nd round, which was kind of coincidental, I guess you could say, considering I had them there in my mock draft. But a lot of people are questioning Alex Leatherwood going to the Raiders, and they think it's the worst move in the draft. I really don't see how it can be that bad. I honestly think that the Raiders, they lost a lot of offensive line, some veteran offensive line this year, and Alex Leatherwood's a very underrated player, and he's great. And we watched him at college. I mean, he's won the national title, part of the best offensive line in the country at the time. And I think that I don't know how people are saying it's a bad move. And they had the team needs, offensive tackles, team need. Alex Leatherwood's out there, he's team need, and I think that they made a good pick, in my opinion, and some people will definitely argue with me, but I don't see what's so bad about it that people are making out to be like one of the worst moves they've seen. But 2nd round, as I mentioned, Trevon Moehrig going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Malcolm Kuntz, Buffalo outside linebacker. Divine Diablo, safety from also in the 3rd round from Virginia Tech. And they picked up 2 safeties, one in the 4th round from Missouri. Nate Hobbs, cornerback in the 5th round from Illinois. And they picked up a center in the 7th round from Pittsburgh. The number 18th overall selection, I had the Miami Dolphins selecting Kwity Paye, edge rusher from Michigan. And they picked up Jalen Phillips, defensive end. So a good move in my opinion overall. I think that that's not a bad move. Kwity Paye and Jalen Phillips are both very good edge rushers, and I think that I agree with the move in my opinion totally. And I think that it was a good move by the Miami Dolphins. They had a very strong draft class, and that's really going to help their defense a lot. Their defense was already very strong last year, and so very impressive start to the draft for the Miami Dolphins. And it's going to be really exciting to see if they can give the Buffalo Bills a close run for their money. The number 19th overall selection, I had Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah going to the Washington football team, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah dropped all the way to the second round, the mid-second round, to the Cleveland Browns, and really not sure why, but I I don't know, man. But the the Washington football team selected Jamin Davis, inside linebacker from Kentucky, and you can tell that that was one of Washington's team needs. But really, I think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is a lot better than Jamin Davis out of Kentucky, and it really, I don't know why. No one really knows why he dropped, and maybe it was a medical thing. Nothing's really came out. He went to the Cleveland Browns. The Browns really wanted him, and they got him, and it's just really questionable move that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah dropped that far, and I don't think anyone really expected him to drop that far. He was a very good player in college, but for sure, and for him to drop so far, honestly, made no sense. And I don't know, man. So we'll see if Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is a second round talent or whether he's a first round talent in a few months from now. The number 20th overall selection, the Bears and the New York Giants had traded picks. The Giants had traded up, traded back with the Bears. The Bears selected Justin Fields, but the New York Giants selected Kadarius Toney, and a good move. And they really wanted Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith or Rashad Bateman. They unfortunately did not get him. And there's a ton of talented receivers, and Kadarius Toney's a great player as well, and I don't think he'll have any problem doing well. A lot of people don't think he's a first round type of talent player, but I disagree with that. But he's a very good player. And wide receiver wasn't a team need, but adding a weapon is very valuable in the NFL for sure. And we'll see. And Daniel Jones, really kind of guy who we haven't heard much about really, and he really didn't have that great of a season. And there was talk that the Giants would select a quarterback in the draft, and clearly the Giants were, I mean, not saying that or making the playoffs in the NFC East is not as big as a deal as it is of making it in the NFC West, but I think that it was just an interesting switch of decision very quickly too as well. But looking at the Giants draft, they really did not have that strong of a draft, and they picked up their team needs were outside linebacker, center, offensive guard, inside linebacker, offensive tackle. Picked up Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, outside linebacker, and Ellerson Smith from Northern Iowa, also an outside linebacker. Aaron Robinson, cornerback from UCF in the third, and Gary Brightwell, running back from Arizona, and Darius Williams, cornerback. And I give the Giants a 1 out of 5. None of those guys are even on their team needs, and not sure what they're thinking there picking those guys. Just a waste of their picks, in my opinion. So just a bad move for the Giants, and really thought that they'd do a lot better than the draft, but traded back. Kwity Paye was selected by the Indianapolis Colts. I had Elijah Vera Tucker dropping to 21, went way earlier than I expected, and obviously Kwity Paye is a very good player, and I think that's going to really add a lot of depth to that defense that was already very strong for the last season. That got them to the playoffs. Philip Rivers did not take that team to the playoffs, and Philip Rivers is a good quarterback, don't get me wrong, but he's old, he's getting old, and he wasn't the reason they made the playoffs last year, and it's unfortunate to see it like that, but you got to face the music at some point that the defense was really carrying that team to the playoffs. And if they didn't have the defense last year, then I don't know what they would have done. And the Colts had a great draft, in my opinion, picking up all their team needs in the draft. They picked up an offensive tackle, defensive end, wide receiver, safety, tight end, and they picked up a backup QB for Carson Wentz, Sam Ehlinger, who had a very promising college career, and he kind of fell off last year, but still had a great year, or still have had some great years, and I think that he'll be a good backup option if Carson Wentz is to go down. Hopefully he does not, but you never know what happens in the NFL. We've seen crazier things happen before. At the number 22 overall selection, I had Elijah Moore going to the Tennessee Titans, and obviously Elijah Moore went to the New York Jets in the second round, and so obviously that didn't happen. They did end up picking Caleb Farley, cornerback out of Virginia Tech. A lot of people said that Caleb Farley was dropping in the draft because he had medical issues. He's had two back surgeries in 2020 opt out, and so which makes sense. You don't want to take a chance on a guy that has had some injury problems. You don't want to waste your draft pick on a guy who's been injured before, and that's why I think that he dropped so far, and a really good pickup for the Titans, who lost some good valuable corners this year like Adoree Jackson. And looking at the Titans draft, they really had a very good draft in my opinion, picking up the offensive tackle in the second round, Dylan Rands, who I had going in the first round in my mock draft. He's a very talented player out of North Dakota State. And they also had their team needs wide receiver, tight end, cornerback, offensive tackles, and safety. And Dez Fitzpatrick, I've talked about this guy in the Senior Bowl video. He's going to be very good at the NFL. Run after catch guy. I'm a huge fan of him. Can't wait to see what he does at the next level. And honestly, he's very impressive that he went out there, and a lot of people don't really try in the Senior Bowl, but he went out there and made himself a name. And he went in the fourth round, but who says that no one even knew about him until the Senior Bowl? So very impressive for the Titans. But cornerback, offensive tackle, inside linebacker, cornerback, wide receiver, defensive end, wide receiver, and safety was the Titans draft class, and I give them a 4 out of 5. They had a very good draft class this season, and it's gonna be interesting to see. I think honestly they're gonna digress. Unfortunately, I kind of root for the Titans at times, but it's I think that they will still do well, and they're not in the toughest division. They do have the Colts behind them, but I don't think it's the worst. I don't think the Colts are really that big of a threat to them. I could be wrong, but Colts are definitely going to improve, and it's their Titans are going to have to keep up, and the Colts are catching up, or the Titans are going to have to pull away, or they're going to be playing in wild card games. And so at the number 24th overall selection, I had the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Walker Little, tackle from Stanford. The Steelers ended up picking Najee Harris, which I think is a very good move. Najee Harris, a great running back from Alabama, and Alabama just produces running backs like nobody's business. And really, I think that this was a move that we had seen possibly happen for a while, and they lost James Conner to the Arizona Cardinals, and it's a move that I'm not shocked by it. When I was creating my mock draft, there was the need for a tackle, and Walker Little was there, and I thought that would be a better fit for them. And obviously, they have Benny Snell, and I just thought maybe Walker Little would be a better pick. But Najee Harris going to the Steelers is really going to help, and a lot of people have him projected to win Rookie of the Year. He's going to get a lot of touches, and they like to run the ball, but they also like to pass it, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens, and I really think that Najee Harris will have a very successful NFL career. At the number 25th overall pick in the draft, one of the more questionable picks in this year's draft was the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting Travis Etienne at running back. I'm not sure what to think of this quite yet, to be honest, and I think that it could be a good move, but they already have a young rookie running back out there. And, I mean, if it works, it works, but if not, it's going to be a very questionable move. And the Jaguars did end up selecting a tackle later in the draft, and in the second round, Walker Little, as I mentioned, they traded up for him, picked up Tyson Campbell, a cornerback. And just because of that move, I want to give the Jaguars a 5 out of 5 in the draft. But that Travis Etienne move I just can't, and it's just very questionable, and it's a huge risk, and I don't know if Travis Etienne will do very well at the next level. If it was Najee Harris, I think that I'd be on board with it for sure, but it makes a lot of sense that the Jags would pick Travis Etienne, considering they selected Trevor Lawrence, who played in college with Travis Etienne, both ACC record holders. So it makes sense, but it's a huge risk in my opinion. And if it works out, then I think then it's great. But if not, then they'll pay the price from wasting a 25th overall pick when they could have gotten a very good offensive lineman or a receiver, and they kind of lack there. The number 26th overall selection, I had the Cleveland Browns selecting Jason Owea, and they ended up picking up Greg Newsome, cornerback out of Northwestern. A very good move. The Browns are really building their defense, and I think that the Browns are really becoming a very complete team in front of our eyes, and we're not used to seeing the Browns be this good of a team, but their defense was very strong last year, and it's just going to keep getting better and better, and really I think that it's going to help a lot. And looking at their draft picks, they had really their offense or their team needs were defensive end, defensive tackle, inside linebacker, cornerback, wide receiver. Demetric Felton, 6th-round pick, great wide receiver out of UCLA, another guy who showed up in the Senior Bowl and had a big day. Richard LeCount, safety from Georgia. Tony Fields, the second inside linebacker from West Virginia. James Hudson, offensive tackle from Cincinnati. Anthony Schwartz, wide receiver from Auburn, a speedy wide receiver, ran a 4.24 in his 40-yard dash this year. And Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah, who I had going 19th overall, he dropped a 4. That was a gem, a diamond in the rough for the Cleveland Browns to pick up. Obviously, Greg Newsome. So they had a very good draft, and I give them a 4 out of 5. I give them a 5 out of 5, and their defense is very good, and it's going to get even better. Odell Beckham Jr. is going to come back, hopefully healthy next year, and I'm really excited to see what the Cleveland Browns can do next year. At the number 27th overall selection, I had Jaelan Phillips going to the Baltimore Ravens, the team we just talked about in our Ravens offseason review. If you have not checked that out yet, go check it out. Link is it's in a playlist. We have all our NFL team reviews we've done in our playlist. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. Go watch all those videos if you can or have the chance. Leave a like on them. And we're getting to your teams soon. We're going to finish up with the AFC North, and then we're going to the AFC West, and then we're switching to the NFC. And we're going to week by week go through them, and it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about your guys' teams, and especially with the draft happening. And I'm excited to talk about it. But I had Jaelan Phillips going to the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens picked up Rashad Bateman. And the Baltimore Ravens, I really forgot to mention that in the last video that we made, the Ravens offseason review, that they had picked up Sammy Watkins, wide receiver from Kansas City, and that just adds a whole bunch of value to that team. And so really I think that Rashad Bateman is even better, and I talked about in that video the Ravens ranked 28th in receiving core rankings, and I think that that's really big help. Both those guys are really going to be huge helps for that team, and I'm really excited to see what Rashad Bateman can do at the next level. He's quite small, but I think he'll do very well, and I think that he's going to have a good year. And Lamar Jackson just needs the weapons, especially for a guy who's very inconsistent. He needs a lot of run after catch receivers. He doesn't need big body receivers, and because he can't throw as far as a Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers type of guy. But I really think that they're gonna have a good season with Rashad Bateman and Sammy Watkins. They're just adding weapons to that team, and it's looking bright for the team. The 28th overall selection, I had the New Orleans Saints selecting Peyton Turner, defensive end from Houston, I had Terrace Marshall, wide receiver from LSU, going to the Saints. The Saints ended up picking Peyton Turner, a defensive end from Houston, and the Saints, they're gonna have a bad year this year. Everyone knows it. They're like negative, I don't know, $100 million in cap space. They're down bad in the red in cap space, and they can't really pick anyone up that's good. They lost their quarterback. Their quarterbacks right now that are in contention are Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill, and I don't think any of those guys can really play a full season with a full good season. And we saw how bad Jameis Winston has been before, and just it's not going to look well. They did pick up Ian Book in the 4th round of the draft, which really intrigues me because I honestly think you don't always see a 4th round quarterback having a chance at starting, but I think Ian Book has got a shot at it, truthfully, and it will be interesting to see if Ian Book does get a chance to take some starting reps. Picked up a wide receiver, Kawan Baker, from South Alabama, offensive tackle Landon Young from Kentucky, Ian Book, as I mentioned, Paulson Adebo, cornerback from Stanford, and inside linebacker Pete Warner from Ohio State. And so I'd give the Saints a 2 out of 5 on this year's draft. They didn't have many picks, and they have a lot of needs, a ton of needs, and it's really unfortunate that they're not going to really be able to fulfill the needs that they need. And so, moving on to the Packers, and this is why Aaron Rodgers is upset with the Packers. Eric Stokes, cornerback from Georgia, was selected with the 29th overall pick. And I had Asante Samuel Jr. going to the Packers, cornerback from Florida State. And I don't think it was the word, and I don't think it's because it's a cornerback. I just think it's because it's Eric Stokes. Eric Stokes he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but he ran like a 4.2 40, and people act like he's the best corner in the league, and or acts like he's one of the best college corners coming into this draft. He's definitely not, but the Packers, when you know Aaron Rodgers is upset about having not many weapons at receivers, I mean, you have the greatest receiver probably in football right now in Davante Adams, but truthfully, I think that, you know, they need more receivers than that. You can't just have one guy out there, and it doesn't help that much to just have one dude doing everything. But Eric Stokes, and just, oh man, just a bad move. And why? That's the reason Aaron Rodgers is upset for picks like that. And I mentioned since 2012, only one offensive player has been selected in the first round, Jordan Love, who Aaron Rodgers is. I don't think you want your franchise MVP quarterback watching the draft and thinking his job's in danger at all. And the Packers ended up still having a okay draft. Picked up center Josh Myers from Ohio State, Amari Rogers, wide receiver from Clemson, another guy from the Senior Bowl, who I think it will actually really help that Packers team if Aaron Rodgers stays. The Packers will fall to shambles if they don't have Aaron Rodgers. It's just the truth. And I don't know, Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams' connection is pretty strong, and I don't know who can really help them get that connection back. Offensive guard from Ole Miss, Royce Newman. Defensive tackle, Teradell Slanton from Florida, and offensive tackle Cole Van Lennon from Wisconsin, cornerback Shamar Jean Charles from Appalachian State, inside linebacker Isaiah McDuffie from Boston College, and and Mississippi State running back Kylan Hill, who I honestly think is a very good player and very overlooked. I think he's a great player, Kylan Hill, and it would be interesting to see what he'll do in the NFL. Moving on to the 30th overall pick, the Buffalo Bills select Gregory Rousseau, and I had the Bills selecting Isaiah Ajorleye. Sorry, two very hard names to pronounce there. Gregory Rousseau, Miami defensive end, very strong player, really going to help benefit that Buffalo Bills team for sure, and I think that it's really going to help them a lot. And so, good move by the Bills, and they need that. They need consistency on the defensive line, and Gregory Owusu will help. And Ravens obviously had the number 31 pick from the Orlando Brown trade, picking up Adafwe Awea, brother of Jason Awea, who was selected earlier in the first round as well. Penn State outside linebacker, and it'll be interesting to see how he does. And the Ravens already have a pretty strong linebacking core, so it kind of raises an eyebrow. And so, we'll see. Joe Tyron from Washington was selected at the end of the first round with the 32nd overall pick. And, the Buccaneers, do they really have any team needs? They're bringing back 22 of 22 starters. And so I just, kind of question whether they actually need a guy that badly. And, they could have picked there was talks of them picking Kyle Trask. They did pick Kyle Trask. But, I think that either way, whoever they picked can't really be looked at as a bad move because they already have a starting guy there for them. They're just really looking for depth at this point, I guess. And, maybe Kyle Trask in, I don't know, maybe 40 years when Tom Brady retires, will get a shot at playing quarterback. But until then, I kind of doubt it. That will wrap it up for today's video. If you guys have not already, please leave a like down below and subscribe. Thank you.